everyone to the Taste Talks. I'm Christine Duke, the Continuing Education Program Manager at Kendall College at National Louis University. And I am so excited that we have a new Taste Talk contributor to welcome today. So I would like to introduce Monique Costello, and she is going to be talking to us about probiotics. This is a field that I'm not very familiar with myself, so I'm really excited to learn some new things today, and I hope you are as well. And I know she's going to be doing a little bit of a demonstration for us also. So Monique, if you would like, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I love, if you've ever seen me do anything like this before, I really love to have very open, interactive conversations. So feel free to jump in, take yourself off mute, ask questions. I'm going to put my chat up just in case anybody doesn't want to take themselves off mute and chat. So we're going to take this from just a real simple standpoint today and talking about just how to make fermented foods is really where we're going today. You'll see I had a cabbage in front of me, and we labeled this eat your probiotics. I like to think about my eating as much food as possible versus taking a pill or anything like that. So I'm all about trying to eat my health, right? Eat my wellness wherever I can. So so why don't you guys let's just jump in. Like, who knows or who could tell me what a probiotic is? Because I heard we have some good nutritionists with us today. Anybody?
Hi, Monique. It's Lori. Can you hear me, Monique?
I can. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, a probiotic refers to the type of bacteria that you have in your colon or your gut. And there are many types of bacteria in there, in the like thousands or something. And the probiotics are the ones that promote your health. So that's how I remember the pro part. And yeah, they do a lot of different things, and we're still learning everything they do, but it's a great thing to know about.
It's a fascinating field, right? Because I think, like, as much as we know, I think there's probably still as much that we don't know, right? There's always so much more that we're learning. And I think about that too, probiotics being just they pro help the health, right? They're good for the health. They help to help different challenges in the body, right? So depending on what's going on with your body, there's different strains. We hear about these different strains of bacteria and bugs that can focus on different areas of the health. One of the things that I like to do, and the way that I've talked to a lot of leaders in the field, is that one of the best ways to help to proliferate some of your probiotics is to eat fermented foods. So as I said, we're going to really focus on the fermented foods. And what you see I have going on here is this head of cabbage. And I want to ferment this cabbage. Now, how many of you out there have fermented your own foods? See lots of hands up. Yeah. What have you guys made? Have you done the sauerkraut? Have you done kimchi or kefir or pickles?
Yeah, pickles, pickled onions, definitely. My husband does a bit of pickling of things too, so.
Oh yeah. Now, is he pickling or is he fermenting?
He's done both.
Okay. Okay, got it. And then I saw somebody else's hand went up too.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, green beans. Green beans sounds awesome. I love the fact that you're talking about the green beans. So really, when we think about, so let's talk about pickling. When we talk about pickling, we're usually doing pickling with like a vinegar, right? And you can do a quick pickle. I'm just kind of messing with my mandolin here for a second. When we're talking about fermenting, we're talking about, if you think about the old world style of maybe making a kimchi and burying it in the ground for for a month and letting it ferment. But what you're doing is you're creating this anaerobic environment. So you're creating with salt versus the vinegar. And you're creating an environment where those good bugs can grow. The bacteria is growing, and this is a very helpful bug for the body. So if let me just finish off my little cabbage here for a second. I'm taking a head of cabbage, and I'm going to take just part of the cabbage today because it'll take me a little while to ferment this together. And I'm going to bring in some salt to this. Now I'm going to massage the salt into my cabbage. I'm using just a regular head of cabbage. You can use a green cabbage or red cabbage. And I'm using a Celtic gray salt. Really, any salt is going to work here. I'm a big fan of doing any kind of salt that is more of a natural salt, something that is a sea salt or something that has some color to it. So it has a little bit more mineral to it. Now, of course, this is always just trace minerals. So, so it's minute minerals, right? Trace minerals, but a little better than a classic white salt that's been refined or that has been bleached and the minerals have been pulled from it, or that there's some iodine that's been put in it. So what we do with our salt, now the cabbage, we're adding the salt to the cabbage, and I'm just massaging this salt in here. And what I'm going to do is break down the walls of this cabbage. And I'm also bringing out the moisture. So when we need that anaerobic environment, we need to have some liquid in here. We need to have a little brine to put over the top of our food that we're fermenting. Now, if we do this with like a pickle or the green beans that other people are using, that I have mentioned that they use, you can make a straight up brine. So you can take the salt and you can just mix it with the water, almost in the way that you would soak like a turkey or brine a turkey like that. But you would take your vegetables and you're going to set them in a jar and pour your brine over the top, making sure that your veggies are underneath the brine of the water. And that creates that anaerobic environment so the outside can't get in. And that's going to help to keep out mold and other pieces like that.
Monique, how much salt was that you used?
Yeah, so I added, so I did just a little half of my cabbage here. So I put in just a tablespoon of salt in this. So the more salt you use, the slower it's going to ferment, and the less salt you use, the faster it'll ferment. This is a little bit of a process. There is some real science that you can find some great information on the internet about everything from how much salt versus your room temperature versus how much you have. I love to just kind of play with different experiments. In my house is usually a little bit colder than most people's houses. Not on purpose. I like to have, but just a typical room temperature is where most people are going to sit with a house. Now, what I want to show you is that if you start to see this, you start to see how this liquid that's starting to come out of this cabbage. Yeah, this is what we're looking for. We're going to massage this long enough that we get a nice liquid out of this. Now, a couple of things that I found that have really helped me when I'm fermenting my cabbage is that I'll leave my cabbage out for a couple of hours out of the refrigerator so it starts to warm up a little bit. So it's not quite so cold. So so it's a little easier to massage that salt in. And the other thing I've done too, if I'm doing a big batch, like if I'm doing a number of jars for a number of friends, instead of just massaging all by my hands, which get a little tired, I might put it into my to my stand mixer and have that mix it down and work it down. But I really am looking for that salt to dissolve, and I'm looking for that salt to just continually release the water here from the cabbage. And I saw the pink salt comment. I love Himalayan pink salt is one of my favorite salts. It's my go-to salt for everyday use. 86 trace minerals. If you think about pink salt, it was in the sea millions of years ago before we had some polluted type of seas. So it's one of my favorites. I got into the habit. I don't know why I got into the habit of the Celtic gray salt. I really like it for my ferments. Right. So when I think about when I think about those probiotics, we're kind of adding to the probiotics we already have, right? We have good bugs, we have bad bugs in the body. We need a balance in all things. I think if you think about wellness, it's always about a balance, right? And so in this case, we're adding and helping to tip that scale more in our favor. Checking in, was there a comment there?
Oh, no, I was just a little background noise.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Got it. So, so when I work with individuals who have maybe some digestive issues, there's a lot to be said for eating a little bit of that bite or two of sauerkraut with every single meal, or even taking that you can take a straight up probiotic pill. But again, this is where I don't love taking a lot of pills. So, bringing in a little of this fermented foods. And again, when we think about the fermented foods, a lot of people think about that kimchi. I think the sauerkraut is great, but you can ferment any kind of vegetable that's out there. I've got some pickles behind me I'm going to show you as well too. Kefir is another great thing, which is kind of like a tangy yogurt, right? And the thing I like about kefir is that you can do this as a dairy free. You can do it as a coconut. Okay, look at all this. I want to show you guys. I did this in a glass jar so you can kind of see just all the liquid that I've gathered here. Now, you'll also see that my cabbage looks like it's a little bit almost like cooked, right? So it looks like it's really kind of just started to break down. Got a little bit close to that camera up there. And the next thing we're going to do is we need a jar. Oh, wait, I'm going to do one more thing. I'd love to add in, so along with this, you can do any kind of flavorings that you like. So a couple of my favorite things to put in my sauerkraut is a little caraway seeds. That sounds like cabbage and caraway are just two things that go so well together, right?
Yes.
And then I love to put in some ginger too, right? Get something in there, a little tang in there, almost a little heat, but then also something that can help to give a little, help with a little inflammation fighter, right? Turmeric is lovely in here as well. I tend to like to add it in until after I've mixed up that cabbage. Yeah, I am taking, so I've got my ginger. And one of my favorite ways, of course, to clean a ginger is with the side of a spoon. So I'm just gonna scrape that off. And the reason I like that, using that spoon is with a knife, sometimes it just pulls off so much of that flesh. And when you're dealing with the spoon, you really get just nothing more than that outside of the ginger skin. All right, I'm gonna take my small zester and get this in here. So when you think about buying a fermented foods, and you go to the grocery store, if you don't want to make your own, and you just want to start dabbling and eating some of the fermented foods, when you go to the grocery store, one of the most important things to do is to look in the refrigerated section, right? So if you're going to go and buy sauerkraut, what we don't want to do is we don't want to buy sauerkraut on the shelf in the can. Right, because whatever kind of living organisms were in there were probably killed during that canning process. So we really need to have these to be, you want these to be alive. Your good bugs need to be kept alive. And the way we do this is keeping them in the refrigerator after they've been fermented. All right, I know it's a lot of mixing, right? You start to build some good muscles in your hands and your wrists happening here.
That looks like a total workout right there.
I used to cook for another person's detox that they would run or cleanse that they would run. There's a number of years ago actually, and I would make like 30 jars of sauerkraut by hand until I started to learn how to use the mixer, that I didn't have to do it all just by hand. And it was amazing and brutal. Like, but I would go every time I went in for a massage, all they did was massage this area of my body for like a half an hour.
If you did use your mixer to do this process, would it be the paddle attachment that you would use for it, or?
That's a great question. Yeah, I used the paddle attachment on mine. So I would start it and with the paddle attachment. And then oftentimes I'd go in and still put it in a big jar, just kind of a big bowl, and kind of finish it off a little bit myself. But yeah, get it started with that paddle and get it working through there. Okay, I have a sip of water here. So the next thing we're going to do, so what we want to do is we need to put this in a jar, and we're going to pack it into a jar. So I've got just a real simple mason jar here. I have tons of jars. You guys probably all save a whole bunch of different jars around your house. Any kind of jar will do. Just make sure you give it a good wash, a good sterilizing. I like to rinse my jars with just hot water before I use them, and like a steaming water. Like I have a kettle, and I'll run that steaming water, and even after I washed it, just to give it a good sterilization. We want to make sure we're working with clean ingredients. And then we're going to take our cabbage, and what we're going to do is we're going to slowly start bringing in a little bit at a time, and you're going to pack this down. Right, so the goal here is we're going to pack down as tight as we can, and leaving room at the top for that brine. So any of that liquid that we have, that we've created, that a little bit of that salt brine, we're just going to pour right over the top, so that can create that anaerobic environment. So now that we have some very knowledgeable nutritionists with us, there's prebiotics, right? Probiotics, I feel like, have been around a little bit, and everyone's talking about the prebiotics. So the way I think about the prebiotics is the prebiotics is the food that really feeds the probiotics, is kind of a nice, simple way to think about that. But since you're all with me, and you guys probably stated a little more clearly than I do, is there anything you would add to that prebiotic comment?
Monique, I think you hit the nail on the head. Definitely that whatever types of fibrous material that you eat, like vegetables, whole grains of the good kind, the ancient grains, or whatever whole grains that you like, those probiotics like to eat fiber. I mean, they're in your colon, so yeah. they're going to break down that fiber.
That fiber that we can't always, like our body can't break down. So you
right.
think almost like the resistant starch, right? And so if we think about some of the different vegetables that comes with more of a prebiotic, and I like to think about the sunchokes and the artichoke hearts and the fennel and the leeks and the onions. Those are some of the things that just pop right to mind for me. What are some of your guys' favorites?
I tend to go for cruciferous vegetables quite a bit. So the stems of broccoli, in addition to the flores, and cauliflower, we're big fans of here. Brussels sprouts, just all the ones that are sulfurous are our go-tos too.
They're so good for the body. I always think, like, everyone talks about these superfoods, right? And to me, broccoli, I say it all the time, broccoli is a superfood. We're like, don't overlook broccoli. And I love that you said the broccoli stems are one of my favorite, like that. Like if I go to the store and it doesn't have the broccoli stem and it just has the head, broccoli stem go, right?
I like
right. And I don't mind trimming it, you just trim off the roughest part of the broccoli stem, and it's just, the rest of it's so good.
Oh my God, right? It's just, and once you get used to it, if you really learn to chew your food, I don't even trim the outside of mine anymore. Like, unless I'm feeding other people because they're not used to that fibrous outside. But once you get used to chewing and chewing and chewing, and because you think about, like, eating hygiene too is a really big part about our whole wellness. Is are we chewing our food well enough, or are we eating in these rushed states where we're half chewing our food, gulping it down, slamming it down with a bunch of water, and then sitting in front of our computers or in front of our TVs and not really even paying attention to that we're eating? Like, that whole process makes a big difference on our digestion too. Like, letting our stomach build up that stomach acid, and how our body can actually break down that food better when we've given it down a breakdown as well too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, when I trim it, there's invariably parts of it that does not trim. So I enjoy that part too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And the radish kimchi. Ooh,
Oh, that
love
sounds
the
good.
idea of radish kimchi. I've become such a huge radish fan, and everybody who ever works with me or comes to my house says they hate radishes, but yet I feed them radishes all the time and they eat them and they like them. I think radishes get a
Yeah,
bad
me
rap.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you use the stems for soups because you don't like the little bits from the flowers. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I understand that, right? We all have our different things. Now, you've been watching me make the kraut, and what I've been doing here is just pushing the sauerkraut. You see some nice muscle just in here, nice and tight, right? It doesn't, I don't want to have any space, and it already has a nice little layer of that brine on the top. You can kind of see that happening there. Now, there are some tools, right, that you can get. I also have this tamper that I will use too that can help you to just push down, or sometimes if all I have left in my house is not a wide mouth jar, one that I have to try to stick my hand into. This kind of can help to bring that down a little bit. And the last thing I'm gonna do is just add in a bit more of that little brine that I have. I have a little more of that brine, which is nice. And I'm just gonna add that right on the top of there. There we go. So now, so we've got our kraut that we've been massaging with our salt. I used Celtic gray salt again, but you could use whatever kind of salt you like, probably a high mineral salt. And I've got our brine sitting on the top. Now there's a couple things I want to do just to finish this off to help it ferment, and then we'll talk about how long to leave this, and we'll look at a couple other ferments that I have. I'm just taking literally one of the outside pieces of the cabbage, and I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to just make myself just a little layer on the top. I'm kind of pushing this in. It's going to help to keep all of the extra little cabbage, all that little cabbage that we have in there down, right? And it's just making a nice layer. There we go. Now, a secondary thing that we want to do to make sure that we're keeping the sauerkraut underneath of that brine is we want to put a little weight on this. Okay, a couple different ways that you can put a weight on this. You can use, well, I thought I had a little weight here to show you. You can buy different weights. So I'm going to have a couple, I have some fun little weights. This one happens to be like this glass little weight, fits in these mason jars just perfectly. And it just sets right across the top and pushes down. And it's just a little bit of a heavy weight to hold that sauerkraut down and in place. Now, if you don't have one of those, because not everybody just happens to have the weights laying around, you get real creative. I've used things like I had rocks where I've wrapped cleaned rocks and wrapped rocks. The other thing you can do is you can do something real simple, like another smaller mason jar or just jar that fits in there. You could fill it with some rice or beans. You can even fill it with a little bit of water. I had too much water in that one though. Be careful how much room you have. I usually do this in a bigger quart jar and have a little more room for it. All my quart jars were busy today, so I couldn't use any of those. And then we're going to take a little bit of cheesecloth and rubber band, which I always have around. So a little cheesecloth, right? We want to just make sure that we're giving it kind of a nice, safe, clean environment. Just nothing else gets in there. So you can just take a little cheesecloth and put it right up at the top of that. And that's really going to sit. That's your kraut. That's going to sit. We want it ideally in a bit more of a darker place. So we don't want it just sitting out on the kitchen counter where the sun is getting at it. We want it in a dark place just to let it do its thing. Now, here's the fun thing is how long do we ferment for, right? 3 days to 30 days. Part of this depends on the flavor that you're looking for. And then part of that is going to be how much salt did we use and what's the temperature in your house. So I have a couple of other ferments that are going. I thought I'd pull those out and just take a look at these. I love that real tart, like just fermented taste. So I tend to let mine go a real long time unless I'm out and I really need it. And I have a lot of clients that I've taught this to that really like to let it ferment for just 3 or 4 days, 5 days, and then they're good with it. So with this one, You can see with this one, I went with a red cabbage. And this one actually has some carrots in it too, but I used the same methodology where I put in some of the caraway seeds. I also love putting kale. You know, just think about when we talk about like those leafy greens. Just set this over here so it's out of the way. And that one had that ferment on top. So now the best way, what's happening with our ferment? We want to check this few days. Right? You want to just make sure that you've got a brine happening over the top. You want to make sure that everything's covered in that liquid and that salty liquid right over the top of that cabbage. So that's step one. And now if for some reason I've had it happen where maybe you didn't have enough brine, maybe enough brine didn't come out of that cabbage, or for some reason it spilled, or your liquid sort of seems to have evaporated a bit. Now, a good, quick, easy solve for that is take a little bit of salt and water and mix it together and make a little brine and just add a little bit on top. It's a nice little solve for it so that you're still have a safe anaerobic environment. And then I'm going to take off. So I've got my little topper on the top, and just dig in there a little bit. Take a little taste of where you're at. If your ferment is still really salty, then you probably need to let that just sit a few more days, right? It's actually pretty good. So I did this one on Saturday, knowing that I wanted to do a shorter ferment. So if you feel like you're at a good spot, if you like where your ferment is at, go ahead and just take a lid. I had a lid. Not sure what I did with my lid. Cover this with a lid and put it in the refrigerator. And then that's going to stay. Now, when it sits in the refrigerator, it's going to ferment a little bit more and a little bit more, but it's much slower. So it's not going to ferment nearly like it did on the countertop. It'll keep fermenting, but very small increments and very small amounts. So it'll be safe in the refrigerator. So that's that. I'm going to actually push this one back down and let it go just maybe another day or two. I do like to, when I put my ferments, I've been hiding them in my pantry. And I do tend to put them in like a little pan, just in case anything kind of bubbles over. Because what you'll see too with your ferments, when it starts to get real active, you might just start to see little bubbles popping up, right? And those are kind of a good sign. Put that back in there. Now, I also did a pickle to show you a pickle, because I talked about if you don't want to do a sauerkraut and you want to make a homemade pickle, this is where we would make the brine. So in this one, I took some pickles. I took just some classic pickling seeds, like some mustard seeds. I put some coriander seeds in here. I've got some dill happening in here. And then I thought it'd be fun to show you, if you really get into fermenting, there's, of course, with everything, there's all kinds of utensils that you can buy, right? All kinds of really fun gadgets you can buy. This one got sent to me, and I just first time I'm using it. But what's nice about this is that it has its own spring mechanism in there. So I thought it'd be fun to make this and show you what this looks like. So in the jar, I put in pickles, some onions, some garlic, some dill, and then just a bunch of spices. And I made a saltwater brine, and I just covered the vegetables up to about there, right? Now with this jar, it came this really nice little spring-loaded mechanism that acts as our second plate. So in our jar over here, right, we put that little jar on the top. This one is great because it has a spring mechanism on it. See how that works? So it's kind of fun because you can just put this in, it'll push down all the vegetables. And then there's just a little tiny locking mechanism. So it's going to keep everything below that brine. And then it has a little cover. We add just a little water in this moat, again, helping to keep that anaerobic environment, to keep those good proliferating. And then that sets aside. Of course, it's been 10 years since I've been fermenting different products, and this is the first time I've had something that actually is created for fermenting. I usually just use simple old jars, because because it's easy, because I have them around, but this is kind of a nice way to just know that you have some safety net kind of built in there. So, so I'm kind of, I was actually going to taste my pickles because I made those this weekend too. So same idea, right? With your ferments, once you kind of get into the habit, you'll get a better sense. How long am I keeping things? And how long does it take, right? But part of this is just a little bit of that tasting mechanism, like how do things taste? And is that saltiness, has it worked through and created a bit more of a tasty product for us? Oh, I put some jalapenos in here too, because I like a little spice, right?
Nice. Monique, someone actually asked, have you made kombucha before?
No, you know what happened is I got a Scooby and I killed it. I hate to say that.
We did have a kombucha taste talk back in 2020 that Chef Ron did. So he actually makes his own kombucha, and he has is it Scooby? I can never get the pronunciation right. Scooby, and yeah,
it is Scooby.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a while, so.
I haven't, and it was one of those things that I was going to do, is one of the, like, okay, I killed the first Scooby, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna do this again, and I just didn't get back around to it. And so it's always kind of like sitting there. And then I will say, like, I started having a little bit of a yeast allergy, so I kind of was staying away from the kombucha for a while, so I just haven't jumped back into it. But I was curious, who asked that? Lori, have you made kombucha?
Yeah, Lori, have you made it?
No, I have not. But I just bought some, and the ingredients read pretty well. And I was looking it up to see how it's made, and it looked like the recipe calls for kombucha, to get it started. So you could buy it, or you could use someone else's, but you need to sort of use it as like a starter. It's probably similar to a sourdough starter,
or like a yogurt too. So, but Lori, Chef Ron, I would
I heard that
you talk to him about it, because
no, I haven't. But I could look at that taste talk in some kind of archive, right?
Yes. In fact, I will email you that taste. I'll find that taste talk and email it to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Not that I would actually try to make it. I'm not sure if I would go to that place, but I like the way it tastes. And it seems like I was gonna say, this entire bottle that I bought. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The entire bottle that I bought, it's one serving and it's 50 calories. So it's really, really, it seems like it's packed full of great fermentation bits, if you will.
Yeah.
And for very little calorie load, and you don't drink the whole thing. I mean, I would never drink that whole bottle.
Much of it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that with the kombuchas, there's so many fun flavors out too. I think there's so many companies coming out with fun flavors, and I do think kombucha is another interesting fermented food that right can help the belly. The one thing that I've read that could be an interesting conversation for us all is that if you get into this habit of constantly sipping on kombucha, now while the yeast, right, eats the sugar, feeds the yeast, right? So the yeast eats that sugar, is that it can perpetuate, maybe is the right word, your sugar cravings. Even though it's not necessarily that you're feeling like you're drinking, like, it's not like a soda you're drinking, but it can help you to just keep that sort of sugary sort of essence going, that you're constantly like reaching for something that has that little bit of sugar molecules from it. So I don't know. I'd be curious what you guys think about that.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking, I haven't, when I buy kombucha, I haven't seen if they actually have added sugars on the label. So
The one that I has does not.
it does not
but-
have added sugars. So
No, but it certainly has the kombucha culture, black tea, green tea, kiwi juice. So there's a
Ah.
sugary juice,
yeah,
fresh
sure.
Yeah.
pressed ginger juice. So this is a ginger one.
Yeah.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah.
It's pretty tasty.
I love kombucha.
I
made
think, as you
kombucha.
guys know,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was making kombucha too, and it's an interesting process. I think you'd really like it. Like it's just, I had a SCOBY for a long time, and then I think I had it for about a year and a half, and then just when I got back to teaching more and things like that, I kind of wasn't just on it as much. But it takes like a starter, it takes love and care, and but it's a fun process. It's fun.
I have all the jars. I have a box of jars. I was making kefir for a while, so instead of kombucha, I was just doing a fermented kefir drink, like a coconut kefir drink, where I was taking like coconut juice or coconut water, if you will, like fresh out of a coconut. And then I did use a kefir starter for it. And so basically you're just making, it's not a kombucha, but it's like a fizzy fermented drink. And so I loved making that for a while. I did have a couple of situations where I had a couple explode on me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't quite have that pressure really blew the jars that I had. So I don't know if I had the formula wrong or if I had the jars wrong. So I did at that point, that's when I started to ferment. All my foods got fermented in a cooler in case anything happened again. But with those, I would take that same kefir mixture and I would start the next kefir batch with that kefir. So I wouldn't need a new kefir starter. I would just take, that much of that. And I'll do the same thing with if I'm making like a fermented yogurt, with a coconut yogurt. Oftentimes I'll take just like the coconut meat and I'll blend it with water and get kind of almost like a thick yogurt or pudding, you might say, and then add in a couple of probiotic pills. I'll take capsules and I'll open up the probiotic pills and just put the powder in it. Right, and then you can let that sit and just ferment again overnight on your counter. And then I'll take that and use it to start another little kefir from it. So it makes sense to me that the kombucha, you could do the same thing. Take a little of that kombucha to again, keep building on that base.
All right, so we've got another thing in the chat from Chris. She says she's been put on a keto diet and she's wondering if she kind of feels like something like this is almost necessary. And she says she eats vegetables, but eating something fermented would probably help too, don't you think?
Yeah, not knowing why you were put on a keto diet or anything like that. I really do feel that when you start to eat, when you bring more probiotics into your body, and when you keep that going, I notice a difference. All of my clients notice a difference. I feel it differently with my digestion. It makes my body run smoother, which to me makes sense, right? You're putting more of the good bugs on your side to help you fight different things. There has been studies that say that continuing with probiotics, whether it's taking them or eating the fermented foods, can help boost your immune system. Certain strains of the probiotics can do different things. Some really focus more on digestion. And some can help more things like IBS. So I think there's variations of where you can really focus. But to me, I haven't really seen reasons not to bring in probiotics, except that, and I'll caveat, I think there's always a caveat. Every single body is different, right? Every single body reacts differently. And I'll take that back. I've seen a few people who maybe weren't ready for a probiotic. Maybe they had some healing to do in their gut and the probiotics didn't necessarily agree with them, or the right probiotic didn't agree with them, right? But I'd say, if you've been put on a keto diet, I think the question might be to go back to the doctor and just say, how about if I add in some fermented foods? It's always a good idea to check back with your doctor to make sure that they agree, 'cause, you know, not knowing what else they have you on or why they put you on, that I think it'd be a great thing to go back to them and just ask that simple question to see what they think. Yeah. Yeah. My keeper it was non-dairy. I made it with coconut water. Yeah, I went with coconut water with it. Yeah. I haven't made it in a while, but I really enjoyed having it around, just having that little bit of bubbly. And I like bubbly, just, you know, like a club soda, but that keeper made me feel like I got bubbles and I also got good for the body, right? Anytime you eat something good for your body is good.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take this guy and I'm gonna ferment him and I'm gonna leave him in, I'm gonna check him like in like 2 or 3 days. I'm just gonna check. I'm just gonna make sure that we still have some brine covering here and that's happening. I'm gonna put my red cabbage back in. He's been fermenting since Saturday. Again, I like to go a little longer. I like to go a little more of that tang. So I'm gonna put him back in and let him ferment for a day. Now my pickles have only been fermenting again, I think since Saturday I started these guys and they're ready to go. I like where they're at. I'm gonna take them and I'm just gonna put them in the refrigerator and start eating them. And when I think about like eating my fermented foods, I'm gonna go ahead and just, sometimes I'll just having a bite, just if I need a snack in the afternoon, sometimes I'll have a bite of the sauerkraut. But oftentimes what I'm going to do is I love, we think about building layers of textures and flavors with your food. Adding a spoon of kimchi, adding a spoon of sauerkraut on top of your salads, right? Or on top of, or even throw it in your grilled cheese sandwich, right? Something like that is again, when you start to build more flavors, I think that adds to it. Lori, you have a question.
I do. So I think I heard you say that the longer you let your sauerkraut ferment, the less salty it becomes.
Yes.
How does that happen? How does that happen?
Well, because I think over the course of while it's fermenting, right, that's I think when we talk about I'm not a scientific person, so I'm gonna just put this out there, right? So I think that your salt, right, is almost when we talked about how the sugar and the yeast feeds the kombucha, like that salt is building the bugs and that takes away that saltiness. So for me, like if I tasted this right now, like and you guys should do this, taste a little tiny piece of your sauerkraut when you first make it right now, it's going to taste real salty, right? And as it ferments, when you think about eating fermented food, some saltiness to it, but it's not salty. So that's going to actually, that tells me when my mine is done is when that starts to, again, I wish I was more of a technical person to tell you exactly the reaction that's happening. But you'll find that saltiness goes away and the tanginess comes into play. Yeah.
Thank
if you
you.
have a better explanation, let me know.
I don't know. I was just thinking about this and maybe it is that the fermentation products are more like acid or acetic acid, which is vinegar. And I just wonder if that would be overpowering the salty taste. So like the vinegar that's created in the fermentation process is overtaking the salty taste. I don't know. I might have to look this up.
And this goes on the YouTube channel, so I'll look it up as well too, and come back and put in the comments like something as well too, just so we can be very clear about the actual chemical process that's happening here. I don't have a good. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't have one. But I think it's a great question for us for me to follow up on.
Yeah, the only thing that and one of the ways I was thinking this is that minerals, sodium chloride is the salt, right?
Yeah.
They don't degrade, they can't go away as like the carbohydrate would. The carbohydrate is going to turn into that acid product and the CO2 comes off. So that's the only thing my scientific brain is trying to think, but
yeah,
that's okay. We'll figure it out.
I know it's not the right terminology, but I always think about it as this is, you know, the creation of the bugs. But actually, if you go back to your idea of really the oxygen or the carbon dioxide that's created from this, because we do find, like I mentioned, you're going to see, oftentimes you'll see little air bubbles that will sometimes just rise in here. So that little carbon dioxide like process that's happening could be right along the lines of what you're talking about. We're releasing that oxygen. It's building that oxygen and releasing it, and then that's one way that it's transforming that.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the bacteria are using the sugars from the cabbage, or sugars from, it's not you don't add sugar, obviously. So the carbohydrate that comes from the plant, and is using it for its energy, and then it releases CO2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what the bacteria is eating and growing with. So that's good. But we'll find a much better, more clear, concise explanation of it. But I think it's a great question.
I'm just throwing in my hypothesis with this too. But could it be that with the fermentation and the breaking down of the cellulose and the cellulose walls, there's more water being released, and that's helping to like dilute and mellow out the salt taste as well? Maybe.
I like the breakdown of the cellulose walls. I don't know that you'll see that you're going to have more water produced, because it's not like, you know, there's times where you are going to come back and you might need to see that you need to add a little more. So that says to me, like, if more water was being produced, I'd have more brine.
Can I give my non-scientific chef comment?
Please.
I feel like the more the cabbage breaks down, it also releases its flavor. So even though it may not taste as salty, probably is because the taste of the cabbage is also mixed in with that salt flavor. So the salt is still there. You just don't taste it as much, because now you actually have the flavor of the cabbage as well melded in with the salt. It's just like if you salt your meat before you cook it, but you taste it after and you're like, oh, it needs more salt, and you thought you put enough salt on it. So in that realm, maybe it's not that it's not there, you just don't taste it as much because you also taste the cabbage more.
Yeah. Interesting thought too. I like it. I think we have a lot of good theories on the table.
Yeah.
That'll teach me to you know, make sure I know a little bit more about scientifically what's happening in the process.
Well, does anyone have any other questions? Or Monique, do you have any more tips or anything else we should be aware of if we want to go and make our own sauerkraut?
Monique, I was just gonna say that your statement about the salt was not non-scientific. It was really a perception. And as the fermentation process happens, I concur with Chef that that different flavors are being created in fermentation, and that could certainly change your taste perceptions.
Definitely.
I
had a question, Moni. Usually, like when I made kombucha and I've done other pickling kind of processes, you do add sugar. Sugar is part of the recipe, and I was just interested in the fact that you're not adding sugar is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I've never seen a fermented recipe with sugar in it. And I think this is one of the benefits over, well, there's a couple different benefits over the pickling, right? One is that you're pickling, you're not getting that, you're not building those bugs, you're not building that bacteria. So I think that's one of the biggest differences. You're also not using that vinegar, and so if you really do have some sort of vinegar yeast issue, individuals can't eat any of those pickled pieces. But you're right. Even when I pickle, I put sugar in there. I tend to choose more of a coconut sugar or a honey or something along those lines versus a white sugar. But it just, you'll find that it isn't needed. I think when you add that vinegar, you've got to combat it, right? You think about the flavor profiles there, and that vinegar can be really harsh. So you put that little bit of sugar in there to combat it. Plus, our palates tend to have a bit of a prefer sweet flavors these days too. And even though somebody would eat a pickle and not think it's sweet, perception of it isn't sweet, but the taste buds know it's there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so again, I think a better choice, you know, I really do try to do more fermented products than vinegar products, but I have my days where I definitely do my quick, you know, quick pickle onions and other things like that because they're quicker. I mean, the one downfall, right? Fermented is you're not doing it in 15 minutes. You need a few days to a few weeks to get it done.
Mhm.
All
Cool.
right.
Super fun. Thank you for having me for my first time. And I'm so glad so many people joined in and we had such a rich conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. And Monique, we are so happy to have you joining us in the Taste Talks. And we're looking forward to many more topics and definitely talking a lot with wellness and eating. And there's some really great topics that are coming up in the future from Monique. So make sure you're checking your emails and checking your schedule. And this week we have 2 more Taste Talks coming. Tomorrow we have Wine Wednesday with Mary Ross, who will be discussing rosés. I know there's a lot of excitement about this, and you know, it is Wednesday, so some people tend to wear pink on Wednesdays. And then on Thursday, we have a Thirsty Thursday return where one of our Kendall College students will actually be doing a talk and a demonstration on the espresso martini. He's going to talk about the history of it and then also do his own personal twist on it. So we would love to have you join for that. I hope you have the time on your calendars. And if not, you can always catch it on the YouTube. So thank you again, Monique. Thank you for all of you who have joined us today. And we will see you at the next Taste Talk. Good night. Thank you.
You join again.
So, thank you.